Hey guys, welcome back. Fedora Friday number 17. Fedora Friday number 17. It's just stacking them up here, right? Very first show in the new year, right? Hopefully you guys had a great start to 2026. It's been a really good start for me so far. Hopefully, you guys don't mind that I started the show a little bit later than usual. Like I try to get my shows done or started at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But, again, I still haven't really recuperated, who knows? Maybe these time slots work better. I have no idea. I'm just going to take it as kind of like an experiment, right? And we'll see how the reception is, in terms of participation and maybe feedback in terms of how this time slot might work better. This is obviously I think this might be the latest I've ever started a stream in a day, but maybe it works out better. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see it. Like I said, I just, I try to give a little bit of time to research everything before I start. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes the extra time really didn't, add anything of value. I just like sometimes when the movie comes up and it seems like it's an important movie, I'll get a little bit of a panic, right? A little bit of panic, a little bit of anxiety, and these movies are like, all right, how do I do this movie justice? And I find that like I'm never really satisfied with how much research I do. So sometimes it's better to just get it done and over with, right? Nothing stops me from talking about a movie later on, right? Maybe something comes up and it's like, oh, I forgot to mention that, and I'll go ahead and mention it, right? So it's these things, they don't have to be opuses, right? They don't have to be an opus. It just has to be, done, hopefully entertaining, and you guys enjoy it, and we'll have fun, right? So, but yeah, again, 2026. Hopefully, you guys are having a good start to it. It's Friday, right? It's like pretty much Friday. I don't know how many of you guys had to go into the office. I mean, it's a little rough. Hopefully, some of you guys were able to take the day off and not have to go into the office. It's one of those things where it is what it is, right? It's one of those things where I'm like, some of us party a little too hard on New Year's Eve, and whatever. It is what it is, right? We all been there. But yeah, really good start. Finally, solidified my plans to go to Puerto Rico. I know I mentioned that in the past, but that's kind of getting more solidified. I'll be there next month with my brother, and it's just a lot of good things coming. So there's a few other things I already got started and done for 2026. And I'll probably share that as we start, getting a little bit more into the year. But we've talked about some of that with our New Year's, our New Year's, or our send off, right, for 2025. We had Hat Tuesday number 17, where we had basically we broke a record, right? We had 6 people on at once. At some point, Morgan was on, and she was the sixth. He was the sixth person, and then ultimately we had Robert come on, and he became the 6th person, and that was nice because we had kind of hit the 6th person mark twice in one show, and we never had 6 people, as far as I can remember. We never had 6 people at once. I thought it went really well, and we kind of talked a little bit about with everybody about like things that they went through in 2025 and more so goals for 2026. I thought that was a really fun show. That was actually Paul's idea when we spoke about it when I was in London, and I thought it was a really, really good idea. I really liked the idea, so I'm glad we were able to implement that. So yeah, so a lot of good stuff in 2025. I'm sure there'll be more good stuff in 2026. At least I hope, right? That's always the hope, Like I said, there's no money in pessimism, right? It's like the money's in the optimism, And I try to be realistic, right? Not to be overly, unrealistic with my optimism, but in general, I try to be an optimist. So, hey, we got Paul. Paul,
Hey,
friend. Happy
hi,
New
hey,
Year.
I'm good today. Yeah, you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Happy New Year.
Happy New
Hopefully
Year.
you're having a great start to 2026.
Yeah, it's been it's been lovely just having some time off. There he is.
Yeah,
Hey,
we got Nathan.
Yeah.
How you doing, Nathan? Yeah, I was just talking about that. It's like, hopefully, it's a kind of rough, right? Because, this year, the day after New Year's falls on a Friday. So hopefully, I'm sure it's probably going to be one of those days that a lot of people try to take off from work so they don't have to go into the office. But it's kind of like a mixed bag. I know not everybody's able to take the day off, but, hopefully, folks, if they want that extra day to spend with family and with friends, hopefully their employers are able to grant that. And if you work for yourself, then maybe you can grant yourself that and that pleasure. Hopefully you don't have any meetings that you have to have. But yeah, it's already been a good start to 2026. I know we had that show on Tuesday. We were just talking about that, and I shared that this was that was something that you came up with when we were talking about it in London. And I love the idea. I really love the idea. We got Nathan saying he's traveling for work. Yeah.
Well, hopefully.
Journey. Yeah. I'm sorry, Paul, you were saying?
I was just saying, if Nathan's traveling, safe journey. I don't know what the weather's like over there, but it's very cold here in the UK. And in fact, not so much down in the south where I am, but further up the country, there's snow coming. So, and we're not very well prepared for snow in this country. So,
I feel like my area is the very same way, Paul. Like we are right in the middle, right? So like that DC metro area is kind of called the Mid-Atlantic, right? And we have kind of very temperate weather in general, but any kind of precipitation drives everybody into a panic over here. And it almost like, let's act like we've done this before, but the grocery stores will start stocking snow shovels, and they'll sell out of them because everybody's just going in a hurry, like it was going to be like this big, this big event. And most times it's not. Most times it's a snowfall that barely sticks. But every once in a while, I want to say like every 5 to 7 years, we'll get a really major snowstorm that, kind of grinds everything to a halt. And I like that because, I'm a big believer in slowing things down, that's kind of why I really like walking. And before that, I did bicycling. I feel like we're always in a rush, and a lot of it's well-meaning, right? We have a lot of things on our plate. Sometimes we take on more than we can manage. And we got Nathan on here. Nathan, how's it going, my friend?
Hang on, just got to my destination. I just parked. Hang on, let me see if I can get this.
All right, sounds good.
Hey, here he is.
Oh, there you are. All right,
Nathan.
How are you guys?
Yeah.
Doing well.
Doing good. Yeah, doing good.
What are you wearing there, Nathan?
Oh, you know it. Look, right here.
Hey. The pin's on there. The pin is on there. I know I owe you an apology.
Yeah. I need to, there you go.
Yeah. Excellent.
Man, that's a show in itself, right? The idea of hat pins. That's a big part of the hat experience are these pins. And I'm trying to remember what was it? I'm gonna call it the Alps hat. So the German hats that are known for having a bunch of pins on them, right? The Tyrolean,
yeah.
Tyrolean.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
The Tyrolean hats with the pins, and as somebody that collects vintage hats, every once in a while, and I featured some of my hats that come with a pin. Sometimes they unlock clues as to like the owner. I remember I have one that had jump wings, and I didn't know what I was looking at. It was when I posted it on the Fedora Lounge that a gentleman who had some military experience said, "Hey, those are jump wings." I was like, I had no idea. But it like once he said that, I started doing the research, and I'm like, sure enough, they were jump wings. So those. So this hat must have belonged to a member of the military service, somebody that went to jump school. Love that. I just think that's awesome because it gives you those little clues, and you start filling in the blanks with your head about what that person might have been like and what they've gone through, given that little clue.
Yeah, I think personalization is a big thing as we move forward. What one of the biggest things I love doing is working with people like Nathan here on an idea for a hat. And between the two of us, the customer and the maker, we evolve it. And then when the customer gets it, they take it even further with things like the pin that Nathan's used there and shared. And I'm sure there'll be other people that will get more hat bands, or they'll have some trimming done, or they'll put
Yeah.
little bits of sewing in it. And you know, for me, that's really where I think hats are going to go, is much more personalization. I think better quality felts and things. I mean, we are inundated in the UK with wool felt hats, which are really cheap from the Far East, and it's you know, everywhere we look at it, and unfortunately the public don't know anything different, because they've not had to look for a hat before. They've just bought a hat because they need a hat, you know. So I think the educational thing is another thing as well, but certainly I think the personalization, which the pins is part of.
Yeah, I think with this one, you know, Paul, when he got that logo there with the bird, and I read, I don't know if that's on the site, is that on the website where you kind of go into why that logo came to be, and when I look at it, you know, it almost looks like this bird it's just starting to take off. You know when a bird takes off, he just starts to kind of flap, and the pin that I found, I don't know if you can see it. But you know, he's got the bird here is in full flight, and the wings are widespread. So that's the connection there with the bird that's just taking off. To you're in full flight. Once you get the hat and you start to wear it, it becomes a part of you. That's a full flight hat right there.
I love it.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, it's lovely. And I mean, it goes really well with your work shirt. Looks really cool.
Yeah. But this is how I break it in. Like when I get a hat, and I'm looking forward so much to this hat breaking in. And well, the way I can do that is when I travel, I just put it on, because you know I can travel for a couple hours in a day, and you know, by the end of a few days when I do that, this hat is going to fit. So I mean, it already fits really good, to be honest with you. But it's going to really form, you know, to my noggin, and it's going to be great. So this is my breaking in, traveling and wearing the hat.
I love it. I love it. And I was just talking about, you know, and this gets into that. We've talked about this topic in various forums, right? Because Paul was talking about that just now in terms of individualizing your hat, right? Or personalizing your hat. And that's something that, you know, it's kind of like that, you know, almost like that, I want to say it was a Marine Corps model that there's many rifles, but this one's mine, right? This is my own, right? There are many like them, but this is mine. Just very similar with the hats. I think we were talking about cars, right? How people like to customize their cars to look like no other car, right? It might be the same brand. You might see several, let's say, you know, let's just say the Dodge Challenger, because I happen to like that car. The Dodge Challenger out there, and people will modify the paint job, you know, all the other performance modifications. Paul, I know you mentioned, you know, at some point being really into the smart car and modifying those cars, you know, and it really is one of those things where that desire to stand out sometimes, you know, because again, especially when you have like the black hat, right? The black hat is like ubiquitous. Everybody, if you collect fedoras, you're going to have a black hat because you can't avoid them, right? So a little way to gussy them up a little bit could be like a pin, you know, and obviously in the liner, right? So so things like that. Those are the things that as hatters, you know, I'm hoping we're going to start seeing a little bit more of, because we talked already about the Paul, I always forget the company, the one that had the hook on the back of the sweatband. I know you had showed it. It was like a little hook for you, maybe like a little rope that you could hang your hat.
Oh, I remember that.
Which brand that was, but I love that idea.
Yeah.
Paul found one of those recently, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or not? It was probably just a video that
long ago. But like I said, Paul probably handles so many hats in any given day. I can't blame him for not being able to remember. But I mentioned it right after you talked about it, because I was just like, more hats should have this.
Yeah, it was a cool idea, wasn't it? I mean, it was something I was looking at, but yeah, I mean, look, I'm getting 2 or 3 hats turning up each day at the moment that I'm buying, but you know, so it's a fun time to. The UK is going mad for Western hats at the moment, and there was a gentleman by the name of Paul Ventress, and I've actually reached out to him. He's a hatter in York in the UK. I've reached out to him. I'm going to give him a call sometime this week and see if I can have a chat with him, get him on the show here. But he's been a hatter, professional hatter, doing nothing else but hats for the last 10 years. But he was saying that in this last year, it's been the worst time he's ever had, and his sales have dropped by about 50%. and in fact, he was looking for another job. But what happened was that, and I know I digress here, but what happened was that somebody came to him asking him to make a Western style hat.
Yeah.
And that's been his saving grace. You know, the UK is going mad for Western music and line dancing and and a lot of concerts going on for the Western US music. And of course, the hats are a big part of the Western scene. So I think it's something that I'm certainly going in with the open road, and I've just made this is a gambler style, which I haven't really done.
I love it.
You know, but and that's just one of these braided bands that you can take off, and I've got several others here that I've made that can go over onto the hat. So little did we know, Nathan, when you and I were playing around with bands and things, that it would lead into, you know, it's this sort of segue, if you like, into looking at hats. And now I'm looking at hats and thinking, well, you know, I can sell a hat for that price, but then I could say, well, look, if you want to work with me and put a couple of hat bands together for another £20 or whatever, there's 1 or 2 hat bands, and you know you've got flexibility in your hat. So it does change the way that you make the hat, because I used to you know, sew the band onto the felt so it doesn't move and so on. But now I can make it if the customer wants me to, so that it can actually come off. So I think that's a good development for this year, and one which I hope catches on anyway. And the West.
No, that's a good idea. Even on your site, you know, you could have the same hat and have 3 different, you know, bands, and it totally changed the makeup of the hat. And you know, with the tagline of like, hey, you personalize how your hat looks, you know, and have all these different options. Yeah.
So I'm going to work with my I have a young designer. I know you've been talking getting it. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Getting a website, Luke, but just to put it in perspective, you know, my website, it's not brilliant, but it's okay. It is a transactional website, but that was put together for just a few £100s. And I've got a young man, but you know, he works with people abroad as well. But you know, yes, you can pay thousands of pounds for a website, but then you can do it yourself or with somebody. And so now I'll develop a page to go in there which talks about you know, the versatility of the hat bands on the hats, and showing different looks, same hat, different looks, wearing different clothes, and just get the idea out there so that we can precipitate, you know, the interest in it.
Yeah, I love it. Like, for Paul, I mean, so you and obviously you and Brad both have websites now. Brad's is not transactional, but he mentioned wanting to gussy up that website as well. So you guys are already ahead of the curve. You know, I know Robert, myself, and it might have been Josh. I think there was a third person there. It might have been Josh. We're talking about building our own websites. So it's nice to see, right? Like the progression, meaning we have folks that already reached that, and you guys can kind of give us the tips and tricks to see how, you know, obviously I want to make mine like transactional, just like you mentioned with your website. So
when you're getting ready to think about taking your idea into a business, give me a call. We'll hook up another Zoom call, and I'll take you through, because what we're trying to do is create a communication strategy. But importantly, you've got to identify who your client is. So who are you aiming at, the age, the geographical location, their lifestyle, their hobbies, and so on. And then develop a proposition that would be ideal for them, you know, price point, product, and so on. And then look at the style for the website and things and put it together. But it's a mechanical approach, if you like, to a business solution, but it helps get all the noise out the way so that you can focus on what will work. And then it's down to trial and error. It really is. It's setting something up that you think, I think this would work, having a go, taking on board the results, and then tweaking things. And then over a period of time, it will translate. But I think what you need is multiple touch points that where you know, people might want to see your brand maybe 10 times before they make a buying decision. So they want to buy into you. They want to feel comfortable with you. They want to feel. I had a gentleman turn up. I think I might have told you a story before. I had a gentleman turn up at the house before, and I to buy a hat, and I don't get them very often. I opened the door in, and he was like, he was like 6'4", and I mean I'm 6'1", but he was like, I took up to him, and it was like, and I was like. excuse me. He said, I feel like I know you. You know, he was shaking my hand and all this sort of thing. And it's like, okay, calm down, come in. He said, well,
Right.
tell you what it is. It's, you know, having seen you on the videos and seen you so many times, you know, you don't think you're going to meet you in person. And
Right.
my wife thought it was very odd. In fact, I thought it was very odd, but he was an absolute diamond of a gentleman, you know. But it almost unhinged me, you know. But you did buy a hat. That's all right.
Yeah. And I think those are things, obviously, you know, when you do that, you never, you know, I mean, the term famous, right? Is like, you know, being YouTube famous, because you hear like, obviously YouTubers that we're talking about millions of subscribers, right? Like, you know, some niche channels like us, I don't know if 1 million subscribers would be a reasonable goal. But, you know, even Kevin's channel, which is at 40,000 plus, like that's a pretty large audience, you know. And it's funny because I think I shared this on, I shared this in one of my videos. Again, I always forget what I've shared and what I haven't, but a gentleman, I bought a flat cap from him. And he knew me. He knew me from Hats and Guitars. I saw his flat cap advertised on Facebook Marketplace. I went. I made an offer on the hat. We negotiated. Then I went to go meet him in a public area, and I was like, "Hi, my name is Luke." He's like, "Oh, I know who you are." It's like, I watch your channel, and I was like, "Whoa!" You know, it's like that was surreal to me because, you know, you know, I'm at 81 subscribers now. I had way less even then. And just the idea that somebody watched my channel and I just happened to meet, you know, obviously, you know, if they're a hat person, there's a good chance they're going to come across some of my content if they're part of the Facebook groups. And he was a member of Hats and Guitars, like a lot of folks. And, you know, he knew me from there. So I was like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
You know,
it's part of the fun, isn't it? It's, but I mean, it just widening your experiences with other people that like it. If when I get people contacting me from eBay, I put some hats up on eBay. So I've got my websites, I've got YouTube channel, I've got social media, and I've got eBay. Now eBay, I don't really expect to sell much off eBay, although I do sell hats. But what it does is and you might want to do this, it stimulates interest. So it gets your brand out there. It shows the type of products that you're offering for sale and the service that you do. But importantly, they allow you to link into a YouTube channel. So people can they may not buy a hat from you, but they might go to your YouTube channel, have a look at what you're doing, and before you know, you're actually building up a rapport with them without you even knowing. You know, I had a gentleman last night, he came on and he was sort of messaging me as though he'd been speaking to me, and I hadn't been speaking to him, but he'd been watching the videos, as it turns out, and he'd sort of got himself 2 or 3 steps down the sales process, which I thought, fantastic. You know, if I don't have to go through that part of the sales process and explain who I am, what I do, and so on, but actually we get to the point, he's made the decision, he wants to actually get a hat made. Fantastic. So the point is that all these touch points of communication build up and start to become your silent salesperson. And so
I think branding is just, it's like a web, you know. I mean, like if you think 20, 30 or more years ago, all you needed was a commercial, you know, on TV, and that, you know, that kind of got you what you needed. But now it's a web of, like Paul mentioned, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or the website or some other social media. Right now, I think the reels, I think that's what they call them, the short little snippets. I think those are really in prime time right now, because I see more and more that, like, people, just because people's attention spans are going down tremendously. So if they can watch just a 10 to 20 second clip of who you are, that just, it's like depositing money in the bank, right? Because eventually that's going to move that customer kind of down the line, where like you've got that trust, and it comes down to trust. Like, do I trust that brand to give me the product or experience that, you know, I'm trying to get to? I
love that. I love that. I'm so fascinated by the level of knowledge that we have in our small little group, not that it should be that surprising. You guys, all have had gone through your career journeys already. Obviously, I know a little bit more about Paul's journey, but knowing, a little bit, finding out in the last show about your career arc, 30 years as a franchisee, that comes with a lot of knowledge, right? I'm sure a lot of lumps and bumps along the way, but also a lot of good success stories, just from a hiring standpoint, right? Like, because for me, my training is in organizational behavior and the idea of, well, one, how do we attract the best employees? How do we select them after we attract them into applying, and then ultimately, how do we develop them into being even better employees, over the course of time, right? And it sounds like a very simple process, but I think anybody that has dealt with employees or just people in general, you probably didn't even need to have an employee. You could have just been an employee and know that process is so important. And it's very easy to misstep for any organization along that way. But that's why I love hearing about the career arcs and just those journeys, because I'm just fascinated by the idea of work, and anything with that.
I must admit, I've been, I think I mentioned that I've been in franchising for the last 10 years, and I'm just exiting that business now. But so I've been looking at, is working within the hat business, is it franchisable? And, as a full-time job business here in the UK, no, it's not. We're not really ready as a market to be able to bring back hats to that level. But I think and personally, I think what we're seeing in the UK are an awful lot of people that are getting a secondary income, either through eBay or Vinted or these online channels where they're buying and selling things, or they're making things and selling them at local fairs and so on, because they need to top up, whether it's their main income, their secondary, their pension fund. And so I think there's a market for that, but it's whether or not we're probably 3 to 5 years too early in the curve of hats coming back into the marketplace. I think the going through the stages now of perfecting, what equipment you need, putting together an operations manual, putting together a training regime, the support mechanism, all of the the franchise agreements and all that sort of thing. Doesn't have to be complicated, but there is a lot of work in thinking it through. So I think that may or may not be something that's on the horizon.
It'd be interesting to see how that could evolve, because I think there's a lot of different forms of franchising that some may start out with like a brick and mortar location. And it continued to grow and grow and grow, and then all of a sudden you can get a second location and you can get into franchising like that. There's also years ago, I hate to call it a pyramid scheme, but where if I said, hey, let me be a salesman, let me get some PJM hats or some KTG hats, and you know what, I'm gonna start selling them, and then that eventually that could grow and grow and grow, and all of a sudden I've got 2 or 3 under me that are doing the same. They're buying it from me and to sell, and there's so many different ways to franchise that. But I think I agree with you, Paul. It's like where are we at in the curve of that? Because I do see hats kind of making, like, I don't know, I feel like are they almost like from like crawling back to a toddler step where they're starting to get around a little bit more, and it's not so much the function of what a hat does now, more so I think now it's more of the fashion sense, and it's interesting you mentioned the Western part of the UK, and that's really kind of getting big right now. But look at the entertainment industry with Yellowstone and all these different shows now. Westerns in general are making a comeback, so that doesn't surprise me that the Western, and even if these independent, I don't know if I'd call them hatters, but they do make hats, but they model these different movie hats and get that flavor of the Western, but it's attributed to what's big in entertainment. So it doesn't surprise me when you said, hey, Western hats in the UK right now is getting a spotlight on it. And I
Yeah.
think that will continue to grow.
I think we need a few influencers. There's this is one of those markets where if we just could get, whether it's a few entertainers, pop stars, those people that are known on social media that are known and have lots of followers, to get to get behind somebody like myself or other hatters that are small, putting together a few hats and wearing them, and just getting people to realize that there's, I don't know why you get stared at. I mean, you know what it's like in London. We experienced it, Luke. But it's just one of those things that it does take a little bit of courage in the UK if you're not used to wearing a hat, to put one on that's a little bit different. Baseball cap, that's okay. Bucket cap, no problem. But when you're getting into the realms of a fedora or a festival hat or a Western hat, to see somebody in the UK walking down the high street in an open road Western style hat, you've got to go a long way to see that. And people sort of think, well, okay, where's his horse? So I've got to have a really good answer for that statement or question when somebody comes up to me, and I've got to think.
I was thinking about that. The other day, because it's, and maybe a conversation for a Hat Tuesday or something. But with the U.S. market, I'm getting to know like why hats aren't as, fedoras aren't as popular now in the U.S. as they were maybe like in the 1950s or 40s. But I'm curious with the UK environment, like, or did they trend the same way, or were they kind of ahead of that? Were they sloped off sooner or maybe later? But I think that's an interesting topic to get into.
I mean, what they very quickly, my understanding is that the 1930s, 40s, I suppose even the 1920s were the most popular times for wearing hats. People came back from the war, men predominantly, that had been wearing hats in the trenches and obviously fighting. They saw it as a bit of a freedom thing, taking and getting rid of their hats. And at the same time, in America, we had some of the presidents actually not wearing hats, and Kennedy was wearing one. And so it was also the advent of the car becoming much more popular. So therefore, transportation. So whereas people were leaving their home, going on to public transport, needing to wear a heavy coat, a scarf and a hat, getting in and out of their own car with a heater in it, they didn't need the hat so much. And so over a period of time, they just didn't replenish their hats. And of course, the youngsters came in, and what happened in the late 50s and the 60s, we know then there was a musical explosion, if you like, with popular music. And of course, hairstyles became a big thing. Now, if you wear a hat and you've got a hairstyle, who's going to win? So of course, with Elvis in particular, with his quiff and so on, he wouldn't want to put a hat on because it would squash the quiff. And so I think with all of these influences, subtly they were having an effect on the way that we were either looking at buying another hat or replacing ones that we had in the collection. And so through I think the 70s and 80s were probably the most barren time, where certainly in the UK we had factories in Manchester, which is in the north of England, and in and around Luton, which is just north of London. And they were the sort of main manufacturing areas, as I understand it, for hats. And we saw a number of them actually go to the wall. And it's only now that I'm finding that one or two of them that are still alive are buying up a lot of the old machinery, which was left in buildings just to rot, basically. They're refurbishing it. And one of the guys that I know, he's actually opening up a shop where we can go in there and do multiple pressings. Excuse me. So I could buy as few as 12 hats, felts, take them to him, and then he would press them out to a style that I would want and the size that I would want. And then I could take them away and finish them, which is the sort of thing that people like Lock & Co and others, they do that because of the volume that they need. So there's not many people that are doing the hand forming and taking an open crown and making it. It's only when you get into the smaller people like ourselves. So there's a market. You got the mass market, which we've still got Fellsworth and a few other brands, Christie's, for instance. And then you've got the middle market, which are either fashion brands that are getting hats made for them, or they're getting them molded and making them themselves, trimming them themselves.
Right.
And then there's people like myself that probably we tend to do, well below 500 hats a year, probably around the sort of 300, 350 hats a year.
Yeah.
And there's only 1 or 2 people involved in the business, but there is that 3-tier sort of approach, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate how you mentioned subtle, because I was thinking today, 40s, 50s, the big, like the idols, or the people that were looked up to were actors, actors and actresses. And what do you see in 40s and 50s movies? You see fedoras, you see hats.
Yeah.
But if you fast forward, some of the things that Paul mentioned about the war, the car, temperature control, but also when you get into 60s, 70s, 80s, what really started to take off are athletes, baseball, football. What did you see them wearing? They were wearing ball caps, so now there was a transition, to more of a sports hat or baseball cap. And that became a huge, and still is, it's $1 billion industry.
Yeah. And those contracts, I mean, the paychecks, I mean, if you follow, just for baseball, because I'm a big fan of baseball, if you follow those paychecks, I think Nolan Ryan might have been the first $1 million player. And I forget when he signed that contract, when he broke that 1 million mark. And then obviously it just seems like as the sport has grown and become a lot more televised and became a lot more advertising focused, those dollar figures started rising. And now you got these athletes rivaling a lot of these stars, these movie stars, in terms of like the focus and the dollar figures that they're bringing in. Now you got MMA that's really big. You had a star like Conor McGregor, right? That's representing Ireland. So a lot of these stars are becoming more international stars, not just in one country. And the really good marketers are making them household names, right? The UFC has done really well in terms of trying to recruit fighters from various countries. In the UK, you had Michael Bisping, and now you got a lot more of stars coming from Chechnya, as well as Dagestan and Georgia. So a lot of markets that are opening up, and these folks are like watching these folks, and they're trying to look like them. You know what I mean? And it's just natural. It's one of those things where, and I mentioned this with this movie today with Rocky, it's a big, heavy influence. Anybody that's looked at my style, because I mentioned that Rocky was a big, especially Rocky 2. I'm going to cover Rocky 1, but Rocky 2 was like, wow, that guy looks sharp. He's got the hat tilt. He has the hat tilt in Rocky 1, but he's got the chain. I believe he has a cross. I'm looking at him right there to my left. He's got a cross. I don't have a cross. I have a little bit more of agnostic, more universal symbol here with the pie. But for the most part, it really heavily influenced my style choices, especially as I started getting into hats. The bomber jacket, as well as just the leather jacket. That also is borrowed from, the older folks in my neighborhood, as well as Rocky, who again comes from Philadelphia, another urban neighborhood. So I just felt that kinship to this character. And it's a story of ascension. So it's one of those things where, like, who doesn't like a story of ascension, And it's just a lovely, lovely story. And I look forward to getting into that.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off, guys, but I will say this real quick about Rocky, and I love the pick today.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are gonna get a lot out of it, but that hat, and I always thought that was a black hat. It was actually dark blue.
Yes.
I think it's in the is it the Museum of American History now, I think. But
I believe you're right.
But that hat, he didn't have enough money to buy it, so either it was a hand-me-down from somebody else that got it as a hand-me-down, or he just dug it out of the trash. I mean, that hat was so beat up, and it really mimics his character. He's down on his luck. He's been rode hard and put up wet.
Correct.
And that kind of mirrors his persona. And I think throughout the saga or the franchise, there comes a couple, like some time period there where he doesn't wear it. And he's very successful, and he's not down in the gutter at that moment like he is when he wears the hat, because I think later on in the franchise he goes back to it because his arc has slowed down.
He was on Yeah.
And then the other, I think I haven't seen that movie in forever, but I think does Paulie wear a bucket hat? I can't remember,
He does wear a
but
bucket hat. He does also wear a
does he?
fedora, but he has a bucket hat most through.
So the bucket hat, I think, I've never worn a bucket hat, but when I look at it, it just reminds me of the modern day kind of jester. He's the kind of the butt of the joke, right?
Correct.
And towards the end of the movie, that nice little Easter egg, where I think Adrian is wearing a red beret, some kind of beret or something.
Yeah.
And that, red, that was the love of his life, that red kind of beacon of hope that Rocky had. And then at the end of the fight, when she comes up, I don't think she has the hat on anymore. And I think that's probably from just hours. I mean, she was in that ring fighting with Rocky.
Yeah.
And after hours of, the hat comes off and she's sweating and stressed, and I think she walks up to him in the ring and he says, "Where's your hat?"
Yeah.
So it's a very neat moment when you see him walk out and he's like, "Oh, I like your hat." And then by the end of the fight, he's like, "Where's your hat?" He's like, it's this little moment in the movie that I think gets overlooked, because the hats in that movie, although there's not a ton of them, but I think each one of them are symbolic. And I think so many movies, and I love what you're doing with Fedora Friday, because there's like Rocky's hat mimics him, and it comes back later in his life.
Yeah.
Paul's persona, what Adrian stands for, because she's his staple, throughout the saga, really. But fascinating movie. I look forward to watching the rest of the stream when I get back on the road. But I'm going to get in and make a visit. And Paul, pleasure to see you again.
As always.
Luke,
thanks, Nathan.
Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. Safe travels, and we'll catch you the next one.
All right. Have a good one.
You too, Nathan. Thank you. Ciao. Wow, Nathan, guys, that was awesome. Wow, what a great lead up to the film. Paul, I don't know how familiar you are with the Rocky series in general, but I think Nathan did a really great job there. Kind of like,
I thought he's stolen your thunder today.
No, not at all. I love that because again, it's one of those things where how I view a lot of these things. I did some of my research this morning, and I never feel prepared, right? It's because, and I obviously I kicked the time a little bit later so I can get a little extra time to kind of chew on this, but I never come across feeling like I'm going to do it justice. And a lot of it is projection because, well, I'm viewing it through my own lens. And I have a certain, lens that's probably going to be completely different, or it could, at least maybe representative of, I don't know what proportion of folks out there that might view it the same way I do. But it's always nice to see what other folks cue in on, because that made perfect sense in terms of like the color. One thing that Nathan mentioned is that, he asked a lot of what Rocky dealt with were, they were movie gaffes, things that happened that they didn't plan on. But what they did was they improvised. They wrote it into the script. On the fly. So I remember there was one story about Rocky's in the ring that he's going to fight in. He's taking in the moment, and he notices that the shorts that he's wearing are wrong. Well, that was a real movie gaffe, meaning they got the image wrong. So instead of going, getting upset and going berserk, what Sylvester Stallone essentially decided to do was to incorporate into the script. He actually points out, hey, those are wrong. And they kind of write it in. It's like, it's because nobody really cares about you. You're not the star of the show. The star is Apollo Creed, so it just works. They just did anything that went wrong. They just went with it. And who knows, without knowing it, it could have been that Talia Shire, who played Adrian, might have lost her hat. They couldn't find the hat, the beret, and maybe they just worked it into the script. It just seems like that's what they did.
Yeah, no, terrific. Well, I'm going to jump off and let you do the rest of the show. It's been lovely to join you on this first one in the new year, and I look forward to catching you again soon.
Sounds good, Paul. Happy New Year, and I'll see you the next one.
Thanks.
Ciao. All right, guys. Well, Nathan Tuck and Paul John Murphy joining me for a little discussion. Man, I love that. And Nathan, safe travels. I don't know how often you travel for work, but hopefully, you know, you were able to have a good start to your year and a very successful road trip there. And Paul, again, what can I say about Paul? You know, Paul's been integral throughout the beginning, since the beginning of the channel. So thank you, gentlemen. I hope you have a great new year, and look forward to 2026. And with that said, I thought Nathan provided a great introduction into the movie. And you know, again, I'm gonna come away with this movie the same way I do with a lot of the movies, especially the ones that are this important, knowing that I'm probably not going to do justice to it. But I'll just get on with it. And I'll show, as usual, I'll show my slideshow, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of my take on this movie. And I can't like start this without talking about, you know, this book. I mean, this is a book that I haven't read. I just know of this book. So it's a book by a gentleman called Christopher Booker. It's called The Seven Basic Plots, I believe it's called. And it came out in 2004. And what Christopher Booker did is to come up with kind of a framework for the storytelling, right? So, you know, obviously storytelling is so important in terms of a lot of cultures. And he's come up with a framework that kind of describes, right? It's like a parsimonious framework, meaning it's not all encompassing. It's not meant to be, but it is pretty comprehensive in terms of capturing and categorizing a lot of the stories that we come across. So you can see here, I have here the 7 listed: Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches, The Quest, Voyage and Return, Comedy, Tragedy, and Rebirth. And I'll go into this little graphic that kind of describes, you know, I won't read all of them, but I will read the top 3 here, 1, 2, and 3, that I think really encapsulate Rocky, right? I think these really kind of capture, and I think Nathan kind of already covered some of this, but let's just go, you know, Overcoming the Monster, right? It says here, the hero teams, let me just make sure I can I maximize this a little bit. That way I can see it and then you guys can see it. So this is, I borrowed this from somebody. It says Amna Khan of Vantage PR. Thank you, Amna Khan of Vantage PR. This is the credit for this graphic. But yeah, it says the number 1 basic plot in literature and in storytelling is overcoming the monster. The hero learns of a great evil threatening the land and sets out to destroy it. And maybe this is a little bit overboard for this, but yeah, we do have kind of a villain here, played by Apollo Creed, that, well, Apollo's trying to overcome. And really, when you think about it, it's not necessarily as much about Apollo in as much as Rocky overcoming his self-doubt, right? That fear of failure, right? That idea of making sure that he doesn't end up being a bum, right? And which he mentions in the movie, right? Doesn't want to be a bum, right? Feels like the society's setting him up to be a bum, and he's trying to overcome that monster. You know, obviously it's also a rags to riches story, right? You start seeing it says here, the initially poor hero blossoms into a mature figure who ultimately gets riches, a kingdom, and the perfect mate, right? So obviously the riches don't really get shown here, but really the win, the idea of going the distance with Apollo Creed, that's what he's trying to go at. That's the glory, right? And obviously in search of a perfect mate, right? He's trying to get respect, but he's also trying to chase his perfect mate, who he finds is Adrian, right? Played by Talia Shire. And then it says here, the quest. The hero sets out on a mission, facing many obstacles and temptations along the way, right? The quest really is to go in there and go the distance, right? To, find out what he's truly made of, test himself against the heavyweight champ of the world, and go the distance with him, right? So that's the quest that he's on. Obviously, the quest also is to get the girl, right? To get Adrian, right? And they're both like they go hand in hand, right? Because he's able to get Adrian initially, I think that gives Rocky a lot more motivation to be able to chase after his dream to go the distance with Apollo. So obviously, this is a little bit more surface level analysis, but I really like this framework by Christopher Booker. Right, I think that those first 3, Overcoming the Monster, Rags to Riches and The Quest really encapsulate Rocky and what really makes Rocky such a great and compelling story. And then we'll go into Rocky, right? The character, right? So obviously Rocky's played by Sylvester Stallone. We got to remember that Sylvester Stallone is a nobody at this point, right? He's been in films, but none of them, right? None of them caught fire. He was basically destitute when it came down to filming Rocky. And what you need to know is that, first of all, Sylvester Stallone wrote the script, right? So these words, right, were coming directly from Sylvester Stallone. All the dialogue is pretty much right from Stallone and from his mind. And he wasn't a stranger to screenwriting or screenplay writing. You know, he actually wrote another screenplay, I believe it was called Paradise Alley, that he went and ended up selling because he was broke. I think he sold that screenplay for $100. That's how broke he was. And essentially got taken advantage of, right? He kind of missed out. And so when he was coming up with the idea for Rocky, he had a lot of that self-doubt. So that self-doubt that the character Rocky was experiencing was something that was mirrored in the life of Sylvester Stallone, right? He basically thought he blew it, right? And now Rocky could be maybe his second shot, right? His shot at redemption, right? So it's funny how the character Rocky and Sylvester Stallone, they're pretty much kind of indistinguishable, right? That's why when Stallone's playing the role, it comes across as so believable, right? Because it really was Stallone's life, right? He wasn't a boxer per se, right? But he actually did live in Philadelphia, as far as I am aware of. He did live in Philly. He has a connection to Philly, but this idea of overcoming the monster, right? Overcoming that self-doubt and that kind of that the idea of not becoming a bum, that's so like that's real stuff, right? It's a very real movie. And you can see here, right, about Stallone's look, right? You can see right there, he's got that hat, that very beat up hat, like Nathan mentioned earlier, right? Stallone did do a video describing about how this hat came about. And really, like, the folks that were working on the movie with him were not really happy about the idea of Rocky wearing a hat. But Rocky replies, well, Sylvester Stallone, right? I keep calling him Rocky, but yeah, pretty much one and the same. Stallone says, no, Rocky's got to have a hat, right? His hat is kind of like his armor, right? He's trying to hide, right? And we talked about that so often with a lot of these Fedora Fridays, where oftentimes the character that wants to become something, right, will don a hat. And sometimes it's to kind of be able to don a persona, right? So what we know about Rocky is that, well, he comes from a rough neighborhood, right? It's a rough background, Philadelphia, right? And this hat allows him. This guy is a gentle soul, right? This guy's a nice guy. He's a very gentle guy, but he's in a not very gentle environment. And this is kind of his uniform. This allows him to go out there and face the world, very mean and cruel world, one that doesn't really think very highly of him. And to kind of portray that image of a tough guy. And, he is a legitimate tough guy. He's a boxer, but he's actually a super nice guy. So we'll go and we'll show, you can see the hat tilt. That hat tilt is lovely. And then the way he got the hat, he, according to Stallone, he visited a hat shop. Now, I'm assuming it's in Philadelphia, but maybe it wasn't in Philadelphia. But it was a hat shop that was going out of business, and he was out there shopping for what would be the Rocky hat. And then he came across this hat, and then he right away, he kind of put it on, and it just felt like it was the right one, right? He noticed that Stallone mentioned that the crown height, he had a little bit of a higher crown, right? Obviously a stingy brim, and you can see that's a very, very beat up hat, right? We talked about the idea of the distressed hat with the movie Lawless, right? And Rocky's hat's no different, right? It's the hat that you would imagine somebody like Rocky would don, right? It's one that's seen, right? It's seen a thing or two, right? But I gotta love that hat tilt, man. That hat tilt, right? It's kind of like that, that nod almost to like Sinatra, right? The hat's not a hat till it's tilted. Rocky, uses it to great effect here. It just looks really sharp, right? And he's got the leather jacket. We'll show some more photos here, right? You can see here, right? He's got the bandage over the eye because he's a fighter, right? And, that previous photo showed him with a chain, but I don't think he really has a chain. I know he dons a chain, right? And we talked about the cross that he dons in Rocky 2, but I don't really notice it. And it could have been that he did have it in Rocky, in the original Rocky, right? Because he is a very religious guy, right? He's a devout Catholic, right? He even goes to go visit the priest for a prayer before he fights Apollo. So again, this is a very decent human being. He just happens to be part of a brutal sport, and his job is, well, he's a street money collector, right? He works for a local organized crime figure, right? And he collects money. He's like kind of a the muscle, right? And so the hat and the leather jacket really play into his persona, right, on the street, right? Because he doesn't want to be looked as gentle and soft, right? He's a boxer, he's a fighter, and he's also a street guy, that collects money for a living, right? Because his boxing doesn't really pay him. So his whole look is just so tough and so urban, but it's not because he is this brute, right? Right. He's not the brightest guy, but he's very self-aware about his limitations, right? In terms of his brain power, right? He's very self-effacing, and it comes across as charming, right? So he can tell that this is a nice guy, but he has this uniform of a tough guy, and I really, really, really love that idea. So you can see here, he works for this organized crime, right? He's trying to take down who he has to go and collect money from, right? And they're having a very nice conversation, right? He's like talking about, what girl, who's this girl I've been hearing you're going to go out with, right? So you can see that this guy who he works for is like, he really cares about him, but at the same time, he's also frustrated with Rocky, right? So I'll show you a little bit more. You can see some of that fedora, right? You got that little feather in the side, really, really sharp on Stallone. He's got the longer hair coming out from the side, just really good look. And then, he's got the gloves, right? That's just, so you can see here, right? Some more angles here. He's talking to this guy. They're just talking about like life. He's telling him, hey, you gotta fix things, right? He's like, and he's upset with Rocky because Rocky is so nice that he lets people go, right? He tells them break their legs or break their fingers, and Rocky doesn't want to do it because he's a gentle guy, right? He might look tough, but he's a gentle guy. You can see here, right, that full effect of Rocky, right? He's got the black outfit. He's got the gray kind of sweatshirt or whatever sweat, just shirt. And he's got that look. He's a tough looking guy, but it kind of belies his gentle nature. And in that next scene here, you can see the dialogue says, "Who's this girl you're going out with tomorrow night?" Right? So it's really, really, really sweet sentiment. And then at this scene, Rocky wears glasses, right? He doesn't wear it ordinarily, but he has to wear it to read and write down what he needs to for his job. So he will put it on, and it kind of domesticates him, right? It kind of you kind of see this is really kind of a sweet guy that just has this uniform as a tough guy. Really cool. I love what they did here with the glasses. And then you can see how he interacts with people in the neighborhood. He's just a sweet guy, right? In here, he's talking to this teenage girl who's hanging out with some street guys in the corner, and he goes and basically takes her and tries to give her a talking to. Doesn't give her the most eloquent speech, right? It basically says you don't want to be a whore, but he means well, right? He's trying to just look out for the people in his neighborhood and keep them out of trouble. And on top of that, if this wasn't enough, you can see a lot of his gentle side when he interacts with his animals, right? You can see that he has this turtle. I forgot the name of the turtle, but he's there. He comes home and he's just there talking to the turtles. Now, he got this turtle at the pet shop, and we'll get that, to that a little bit more. So you can see how his gentle side, just from the way he interacts, even with his pets, right? You can see that this guy has a lot of love in him, and then obviously you can see the relationship he has with his dog Butkus, right? Ginormous dog, also a kind of a tough looking dog, but just as sweet, right? They're kind of like each other, right? And he dresses up Butkus like it was, his son. And just a sweet, very sweet relationship, and it really softens the character and gives you a glimpse into the true nature of Rocky. And then obviously we talked about the idea that he goes on this quest, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But you can see here, right, when he's not wearing that fedora, he has this kind of this knit cap, right, which is just goes along with like that blue collar look that they were going for with Rocky. And then obviously at the end, he kind of triumphs, right? He doesn't win the fight, but he kind of won already because one, he got the girl, and two, well, he's got the fight, right? He kind of already won before he's even like gotten to the fight. Really iconic photo, and right at the steps here in Philadelphia. Great city, love Philadelphia, right? Like Philly, Baltimore, and Newark. I love those cities, right? As a Brooklyn boy, I really love those other very close by urban environments. Obviously, DC as well. It just feels like home when I go visit those cities, and just beautiful, beautiful city. Right? Just known as a tough city, but just a very, very beautiful city. And let's talk a little bit more about this girl, right? This girl is played by Talia Shire, and you might know Talia Shire from her role as Connie from The Godfather, right? She was Michael Corleone's sister, older sister. Talia Shire, I believe, is part of Francis Ford Coppola's family. I don't remember if she was a niece or not, but the Coppolas, there's a good number of them, right? They have Sofia Coppola, who was in Godfather 3. You have Nicolas Cage, who I believe is Francis Ford Coppola's nephew, right? He just changed his name to Cage because he didn't want to ride the name of the Coppola name, right? Which is already big from the Godfather movies and everything he did after that. But yeah, this is a showbiz family, and Talia Shire, is not a bad looking lady, but the lady that Rocky falls in love with is this, right? She's pretty much a nerd. She's a nerd that works at a pet shop, and Rocky just goes and finds every reason to go visit this pet shop and talk to this girl who he thinks is gorgeous, right? She obviously very shy, but he thinks she's the best girl ever. And he just comes up with reasons to go buy a pet, right? He bought the turtles at this pet shop. He'll buy butt kiss, collars and things like that, just so he can go and talk to this girl. But he's really painfully shy himself, right? Like they're both painfully shy. Rocky just feels that he has a little bit more courage, so he goes and just makes conversation, even though he kind of feels like a dumbass, after having talked to Adrian. He feels like he blew it, right? Because she's not reciprocating. But it's a very, very, very sweet kind of sentiment, and it really kind of again gives you an idea of the sweet guy that's underneath this tough exterior with Rocky. Right? It's just it's just very, very sweet. At some point, Adrian, Rocky is able to talk to Adrian's brother, Paulie, and convinces her to be able to let him, take her out, right? Because Paulie's just an abusive guy. We'll get into a little bit of Paulie later. He's kind of an abusive drunk, right? He's a terrible brother, older brother, and he does allow Rocky to ask Adrian out, and they eventually go out on a date. And Rocky ends up taking Adrian to the ice skating rink, and this is a completely improvised, scene in the movie, right? I mean, Stallone did talk about this, that this was like not planned. I don't think they had skates for Stallone, so Stallone decided that he was going to go and just jog through the skating rink while Adrian is skating, and it just works, right? It just shows you, and he's just saying these very sweet things, right? And they're both very self-effacing, right? Rocky thinks he's a dummy, right? He's punchy. Adrian thinks she's ugly, right? Because they probably just heard that growing up, and it became part of their personalities. But they both think think very highly of the other, right? And it just works. And that chemistry that they have, Stallone and Talia Shire, in Rocky, is just timeless. It really is very sweet, and you can see some of the photos here, of the two together. It's just like they go together, right? Like you can't be pairing. Like I don't know if it was Stallone's idea, but I do believe that Stallone chose Talia Shire for the role, and I think he did a bang up job because the chemistry is just there. So I'll cycle through some of these photos. You can see here, right? It's always by Rocky's side. Rocky is able to become vulnerable with Adrian, right? Remember, with Rocky, he's less likely to don that hat, right? That uniform, that tough guy uniform with Adrian, right? He's able to show his true gentle side with Adrian, and he likes that because he's able to be his true self. He doesn't have to hide from the tough environment, the tough Philly environment, right? Yeah, he can just be vulnerable. And that's really, really beautiful. You can see here this scene here where Rocky is basically kind of just he's got his back face to Adrian because he can't, essentially, he's confessing that he really doesn't think much of his chances here. And he's scared, right? Even though he knows he's the guy, he has to be the tough macho guy. He knows that he's supposed to be that. But with Adrian, she just allows him and empowers him to be vulnerable. And it's just a very, very sweet scene. And again, remember, this is all coming from Sylvester Stallone. He wrote all this. So it's just miraculous, right? So you can see here that Stallone, just like Rocky, probably was in the movie industry, and they thought of him as a certain way. They didn't think of him as a brilliant writer or a brilliant actor, right? They just thought of him, this guy's a guy that is built, right? He's got a body to play thugs, right? And he could definitely do that, but Stallone was trying to prove with this movie that he was much more than that, and he just pulled it off brilliantly. And you can see here at the end, again, Rocky after the big fight, and it's just got Adrian by his side. It's just, and you can see the bloody shorts, right? This guy just went through a whole war, and he could do it only probably because Adrian believed in him, right? If it wasn't for Adrian, he probably would have never even had the guts to try to go through this, let alone succeed and go the distance with the heavyweight champ. And speaking of the heavyweight champ, we'll go into Apollo Creed, right? Apollo Creed is the heavyweight champion of the world, right? Very, very tough guy, a guy who's has a body griddle, chiseled out of granite, right? Carl Weathers did a great job, right? He had a very Ali-like persona, right, in this movie. If I had to pick, Apollo Creed is probably like a mix of Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, right? It's like a perfect melding of the two, right? He had that toughness of Frazier, but that swag of Ali, and Carl Weathers pulls it off tremendously. Now, Carl Weathers wasn't a boxer, but he was a very athletic guy, according to what Stallone was mentioning. And he just kind of he just clicked, right? They clicked on screen. And I think it was like very few people probably could have pulled off Apollo Creed like Carl Weathers. And really the whole plot here was, this is the heavyweight champ, right? He's kind of run through the division, right? He's beat all the guys he needs to beat, but he wants to kind of do something spectacular, right? He kind of wants to find somebody that he can carry a show with. And what they're doing is searching for any local guys that they can kind of create a spectacle of an event, right? Somebody he's obviously going to beat, right? Because he can beat everybody, but he wants to create a spectacle. And then they come up with the idea of him fighting an Italian guy, right? So that's how they come across Rocky, right? And the idea was, yeah, you're obviously going to whip this guy, but people love this. People will love the whole idea of the Great White Hope, right? So they're planning this. It's very pre-planned, and something that's very, very akin to like some of the sideshows that you would see in some of these boxing events. So I think it really, really rings true. It's another point on the side of realism for this movie. And then, again, it's one of those things where they know that they're going to cream him, and even Rocky knows that he's going to get creamed. But obviously, it's an opportunity for him to kind of show the world what he's made of. And even though he really doesn't have a whole lot of self-belief, he agrees to go with it because, well, it's an opportunity, right? A guy like Rocky really doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities. So he's like, hey, what the heck? I'll probably get beat pretty bad, but maybe I can find out a little bit of what I'm made of by doing this. So you can see here, right? Apollo Creed is not taking Rocky serious in the least bit, and Rocky doesn't even take himself serious, right? Like Rocky's going along with it because he's like, yeah, you're probably going to pummel me because I'm not that great. But over time, right? This is like this is the monster that Rocky has to conquer, right? Besides the man in front of him, this heavyweight champion, Rocky has to conquer a lot of that self-doubt throughout this movie, right? That's the real monster that he has to overcome. And he does it, right? You can see that slowly with the help of Adrian and some of the other characters in the movie, he is able to conquer this, but it's mostly Adrian, right? It's obviously Rocky himself, but it's Adrian allows that because Rocky is able to be his true self, right? Remember that idea that, right? We talked a lot about, I've even written articles on authenticity, right? I've written about authenticity in the workplace, but authenticity is something that has value well beyond the workplace, right? You have to be true to yourself, right? Because it's exhausting not being yourself. And then Adrian allows Rocky to be his true gentle self, and that empowers him, and it makes him have this belief that, well, if Adrian's able to accept me for who I am, a really nice, gentle guy, right? She sees right through my facade, then maybe I can go the distance with this guy, right? So you can see that arc, and it's a really beautiful process that you're seeing throughout the movie, and it's just the pacing is just perfect. But you can imagine, right? So this is the guy that Stallone seen across the ring from him. So he's like, man, this guy is first of all an ultimate showman, right? You can see here with the Americana, in all the uniform. He's got all the nicknames and all that stuff. But Rocky has to kind of like look past it and say, you know what? I'm gonna go with this guy, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go the distance, no matter what. It's just beautifully done. Carl Weathers killed it in this role. Again, for me, the perfect match, like a perfect blend. Apollo's the perfect blend between Joe Frazier, another Philly boxer, and Muhammad Ali, who again had that gift of gab. He had that showmanship. It's just, again, the perfect fighter. And then we mentioned here, Paulie, right? Paulie is Adrian's brother, her older brother, right? He's kind of like the one that's supposed to be looking out for her, but Paulie's kind of like a loser, right? A lovable loser. He's an alcoholic. He's a violent drunk as well, right? He wears this bucket hat throughout most of the movie. He's just like this guy that's like never going to win because he's got his own demons that he's facing. Usually, the demon that he's facing is this idea of being a drunk, right? An alcoholic. So you can see here, right? It's not just Rocky trying to overcome their issue, right? Adrian's trying to overcome her issue with self-image, right? Believing that she's ugly. Paulie thinks that he's a loser because he's a drunk. He can't control his liquor, right? And he gets violent, right? Even though he ends up hurting the people that he loves the most, right? His family, his sister. This is Paulie's played by Burt Young, and Burt Young is just awesome, right? Always plays like a tough guy character, just an iconic character. He also was in Sopranos. He's been in so many movies, right? I remember Back to School. He was in the movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. Just a really awesome actor, Burt Young. And he does Paulie to a T. That's great. Again, one of those characters where it's hard to imagine anybody else playing him. And you can see some more photos of Burt Young. Again, I don't know how much of this came from the movie itself. This might have just been like Burt Young on the set, right? When he's not in the movie. But you can see here, he's wearing a fedora. It's kind of like looks like it's kind of like a corduroy, right? It's got like the ridges here, like a corduroy fabric. But it looks really sharp. I like the look. It looks like he's very wintry, like he's dressed for winter. He's got the scarf and everything, and just a good look. And obviously, comes across as a tough guy. Another angle here, and then this one, I guess, is from the movie. He's got that hat, he's got that fedora. Again, stingy brim, right? And Rocky not wearing the fedora, right? He's training, right? He's got the knit cap because it's cold outside, and he's in training. And he forms that bond with Paulie because, well, one, he's like, hey, I love Adrian. That's your sister. I need to go and make good with you so that I can stay in the good graces of Adrian. And they form a real, genuine connection, right? They can become really good buddies. And Rocky probably helps, right, Paulie overcome his stuff. He's like, well, if Rocky can go and get this opportunity, why can't I? So you can see, right, that Rocky is not just helping himself out. He's uplifting those around him. Such a beautiful story. And then obviously another character that I can't forget is Mick, right? Mick is Rocky's trainer, right? He runs the gym, right? He got his own gym. And he also doesn't really believe in Rocky, right? He doesn't believe in him. I think he believes that Rocky has something and that he's kind of like wasted it by doing a lot of things that he's doing. But at some point, he comes to Rocky and says, hey, I like to train you. And Rocky has kind of has it out with Mick because he's like, well, you called me a bum. You didn't think I was going to amount to anything. Now that I have this heavyweight champ, this heavyweight shot at the champ, now you want to come and train me? And Burgess Meredith is just a fine actor. He did a really good job with this and that voice, right? Everybody remembers Mick's voice, and he's like, He has that very gruff, gravelly voice. He's a small guy, but he has that gravelly voice. It's like plays that tough Irish former boxer, right? That never got his chance, right? He just had these brutal wars, and all he has to show for it is this gym. Working with a lot of fighters that will probably never ever be anything. So Mick is viewing this as his opportunity, right? Just like Rocky's got his opportunity, Mick just realized that this might be his opportunity to actually coach somebody that could go, and maybe have a shot at beating the champ. But right, just like he didn't believe in Rocky, Rocky also has his doubts about Mick because, well, at some point he didn't believe in him. So Rocky's kind of like, yo, what was up with that when you thought I wasn't going to amount to anything? So it's a really, really nice, honest moment between a trainer and his fighter. And you can see here, right? He's like, Mick comes to him literally with his hat in hand, right? You don't see it in this scene, but at some point Mick does take his hat off, right? Because he essentially like, hey, I know I did you wrong, but I'm coming to you, because I really need this. I need this for me. I need to know that I can go and be a trainer at the highest level. So it's just a very beautifully done story. All these characters are just really well done, right? They really advance the story, and it really does give you a sense of like the that uplifting story that has become Rocky, and the whole entire franchise I think is brilliant. I mean, obviously there's some movies that are better than others, right? For me, Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 are the best. Honestly, if I had to choose, I'd probably choose Rocky 2, to be even slightly better than the original. But there's like a toss-up, right? They really go hand in hand. And there's been I really do like the Creed series, right? That especially the first Creed movie that came out, I believe in 2015. Really well done, right? It really does highlight kind of like that arc, right? For the Creed family. Just really well done. Michael B. Jordan as Adonis Creed, man. Maybe I'll cover that at some point. I do want to cover at some point Rocky 2. There's a lot of movies I definitely want to cover, but I felt like I really had to go and start off with the original. Really well done movie. Again, really highlighting those, those first three basic plots, right? We talked about overcoming the monster, right? Besides Apollo Creed, the real monster here is that self-doubt, right? That a lot of us might face, especially if you come from a very tough environment, like a lot of these characters came from. That's the real monster that's being overcome. And then obviously rags to riches and the idea of the quest, right? The process that one goes through in the ascension. And that's really what Rocky is a story of ascension. So yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I went a mile a minute there, but hopefully you guys got something out of that. I'm going to remove the slideshow, and again, I don't think I mentioned it, but this is kind of like my most Rocky hat, I guess. This is my champ hat. Right. Champ is one of those, right. Right. It's really kind of goes with, right. The Rocky character, right. Champ, right. It's an underdog kind of a brand, right. It's a brand for like an entry level hat. Right. And if you put a little hat tilt, at least I tried to get a little bit of the hat tilt in there for you guys. So hopefully that came across. I don't know. Maybe my hat tilt game is a little off. It's a little difficult with some hats, right? Depending on the size to do the hat tilt. But Rocky had a much more oversized hat, so you could really get that hat tilt on, right? Which is kind of a nice little tip for you guys that really want to do the hat tilt. Just buy a size a little bit bigger. That'll make it a little easier to get your hat tilt on. So yeah, so that was Rocky. Hopefully you guys, I felt like I went a mile a minute there, but hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I want to thank Nathan Tuck and Paul John Murphy for joining us, right? I'm going to scroll Paul's banner right here. That way you can go ahead and support his YouTube channel. You can go ahead and follow him on Instagram. You can also visit his website where you can order some of his fine hats, right? You saw some of my PJ Murphy hats, right? My ebony and ivory and my Mets fedora. You've seen the fedoras, right? That Nathan has shared, right? He's got several PJ Murphy and Son fedoras, and they all look sharp, especially that gray one with the double-decker ribbon, man. Nathan, that's a great hat. That's my favorite out of all of them, man, I tell you. But yeah, support these gentlemen in everything they do. But you know what I'm going to say, right? Even if you don't support these gentlemen, even if you don't, follow them on Instagram or subscribe to their YouTube channel, the one thing you got to do, right? Or else we'll get Rocky out there, right? Rocky will come back and, well, he won't hurt you, right? Because he's too gentle of a soul, right? Maybe Rocky will just go and with his gloved hand, he'll just go whoop and hit that subscribe button for you, and just say, yo, what you doing? All right. But even if you don't do that, the one thing you got to do that's non-negotiable, right, is stay adding, my friend. Have a great day and a happy new year. Ciao, everybody.